The moment you wake up, you reach for your phone, not because anyone messaged, not because anything urgent happened, but because the silence of the morning feels like a threat, like something waiting to swallow you whole. You turn on music while you shower, podcasts while you drive, television while you eat. Background noise follows you like a shadow you created on purpose. And when it's quiet, truly quiet, something happens inside you, a tightness, a restlessness, an unbearable itch that makes you want to fill the emptiness with anything at all. You've called it preference, you've called it habit, you've told yourself you just like noise, you just like company, you just like stimulation. But here's what you haven't admitted. You're not filling the silence because you enjoy the noise. You're filling it because you're terrified of what you'll hear when everything stops. If you've ever felt your heart race in a quiet room, if you've ever turned up the volume just to drown out your own thoughts, then what I'm about to show you will explain everything. Because hating silence isn't a personality trait. It's a wound that never learned how to heal. In 2014, a film was released that terrified people without a single monster, ghost, or killer. It's called Whiplash. Directed by Damien Chazelle, starring Miles Teller as Andrew, a young jazz drummer desperate for greatness, and J.K. Simmons as Fletcher, the abusive conductor who pushes him to the edge. On the surface, it's a film about music, about ambition, about the cost of excellence. But underneath, it's a study of a person who cannot tolerate silence, who fills every moment with noise, because stopping means facing something unbearable. Watch Andrew throughout the film. He drums until his hands bleed. He practices until dawn. He sacrifices relationships, health, sanity, all to keep the rhythm going. There's a scene where his girlfriend asks him to spend time with her. Just time. No agenda, no performance, just presence. He can't do it. He physically cannot sit in the stillness of connection without needing to fill it with achievement. Andrew doesn't hate silence because he loves drumming. He loves drumming because he hates silence. The noise isn't the goal, the noise is the escape. And Fletcher, the terrifying conductor, understands this perfectly. He weaponizes silence. Watch him in the rehearsal scenes. The way he stops the music suddenly. The way he lets the quiet stretch until it becomes unbearable. The way he uses stillness as a form of psychological torture, because Fletcher knows something that Andrew hasn't admitted to himself. The silence holds everything Andrew is running from. If you've ever filled your life with noise, activity, and distraction, if stillness makes you feel like you're suffocating, then Andrew is your mirror. And his story reveals why the quiet feels so dangerous. Let me show you what silence actually is. Not acoustically, psychologically. Silence is the absence of external input. And when external input stops, internal input amplifies. This is simple neuroscience. Your brain is always generating thoughts, memories, feelings. When you're surrounded by stimulation, noise, conversation, screens, that internal content gets suppressed, pushed to the background, manageable. But when the stimulation stops, everything you've been suppressing rushes forward. The regret you haven't processed, the grief you haven't mourned, the questions you've been avoiding, the version of yourself you don't want to meet. Silence isn't empty, silence is full. And people who hate silence aren't bothered by the absence of sound. They're terrified of the presence of themselves. There's another film that shows this perfectly. Her, released in 2013, directed by Spike Jonze. Joaquin Phoenix plays Theodore, a lonely man who falls in love with an artificial intelligence named Samantha. Watch how Theodore lives. He walks through crowds with earbuds in. He talks to his AI system constantly. He fills every moment with her voice, her presence, her noise. And there's a devastating scene where the system goes offline. Samantha is gone temporarily, and Theodore is left alone. In actual silence, watch his face. Watch the panic rise. Watch him frantically try to reconnect, to fill the void, to escape the quiet that is now pressing against him like a physical weight. Theodore isn't addicted to Samantha. He's addicted to not being alone with himself. She was the most sophisticated background noise ever created. And when she disappeared, he had to face something he'd been running from his entire life: the silence of his own unprocessed grief. If you've ever felt that panic, if losing your phone or your earbuds or your connection to noise feels like losing your sanity, you understand Theodore perfectly. The noise was never about pleasure, it was about protection. The fear of silence has a clinical name. It's called sedate phobia, the irrational fear of quiet. But here's what research reveals. It's not irrational at all. A 2014 study, published in the journal Science, made headlines around the world. Researchers at the University of Virginia gave participants a choice: sit alone with their thoughts in silence for 15 minutes, or give themselves an electric shock. The results? 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves rather than sit in silence. Let that settle. People would rather experience physical pain than sit quietly with their own minds. This isn't weakness, this is revelation. It shows us that the human brain, for many people, experiences silence as genuinely threatening. Why? Neuroscientist Dr. Marcus Reichel discovered something he called the default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on external tasks. This network is responsible for self-reflection, memory processing, and planning. Here's the problem. For people with unprocessed trauma, depression, or anxiety, the default mode network becomes a torture chamber. Instead of peaceful reflection, it generates rumination. Instead of memories, it replays wounds. Instead of planning, it spirals into catastrophe. When these people encounter silence, their default mode network activates, and suddenly they're drowning in thoughts they can't control. So they fill the silence. Not because they're shallow, not because they're distracted, but because silence triggers a neurological response that feels like danger. In the film A Quiet Place, released in 2018, the premise is literal. Make a sound, and monsters will kill you. The family must live in complete silence to survive, but watch the characters carefully. Watch how the enforced silence reveals everything they've been hiding from each other. The guilt, the blame, the grief over their lost son. The monsters aren't the real threat. The silence is. Because silence forces them to face what noise had been protecting them from. Director John Krasinski understood something profound. Silence doesn't kill you. What lives inside the silence might. Where does this fear begin? Why do some people rest in quiet while others feel like they're suffocating? The answer, almost always, is childhood. Developmental psychologist Donald Winnicott introduced a concept called the capacity to be alone. He argued that healthy children develop this capacity when they experience being alone in the presence of a caregiver. Think about that. A child plays quietly. The parent is in the room, present but not interfering. The child learns that solitude is safe, that being with themselves is not abandonment. That silence holds them rather than threatens them. But what happens when this doesn't occur? Some children grow up in chaos, homes where silence meant something bad was coming, where quiet was the calm before the storm, where the absence of noise signaled danger. Others grew up with absence, emotional absence, parents who were there but not present. Children learned to fill the emptiness with something, anything, because the silence felt like proof that no one cared. And others grew up with criticism. The moment things got quiet, a harsh voice would fill it. Judgment, disappointment, attack. They learned that silence was simply space, waiting to be filled with pain. These children grow into adults who cannot tolerate stillness. Not because they're flawed, but because their nervous systems learn that silence is dangerous. In the film Manchester by the Sea, Casey Affleck plays Lee, a man carrying unimaginable grief. He caused the death of his children in a fire and has never recovered. Watch how Lee lives. He picks fights in bars. He drinks. He keeps the television on constantly in his empty apartment. He seeks noise, any noise, because the silence holds the screams he'll never stop hearing. There's a scene where someone asks him about his past. He can barely speak. The words won't come, because putting language to his pain would require sitting in the silence of it, and he has spent years making sure that silence never arrives. Lee isn't avoiding quiet because he dislikes it. He's avoiding it because he knows exactly what's waiting there. And he has decided, perhaps unconsciously, that he would rather live in noise forever than face the silence once. Not everyone who hates silence hates it for the same reason. Let me introduce you to 3 types. See which one you recognize. The first is the ruminators. These are people whose minds attack them in the quiet. The moment external noise stops, internal noise begins. Replaying conversations, analyzing mistakes, catastrophizing futures. The silence isn't peaceful for them. It's a courtroom where they are perpetually on trial. In Black Swan, Natalie Portman plays Nina, a ballerina whose mind turns against her. Watch the scenes where she's alone, where it's quiet. Her reflection moves differently than she does. Her thoughts become hallucinations. The silence becomes a space where her psyche fractures. Nina fills her life with rehearsal, practice, perfection, because stopping means facing the voice inside that tells her she will never be enough. The second type is the grief avoiders. These are people carrying loss they haven't processed. Silence holds their grief like a container, and they cannot bear to open it. In Up, the animated masterpiece, the opening sequence shows Carl and Ellie's entire life together in minutes. Joy, struggle, dreams deferred, and finally, Ellie's death. Watch Carl afterward. He sits in silence in their home, and the silence is unbearable. Every quiet moment holds her absence. So he goes on an adventure, noise, danger, distraction, because movement keeps the grief at arm's length. The third type is the identity avoiders. These are people who don't know who they are without external validation. Silence forces them to confront an emptiness that feels like annihilation. In Fight Club, the narrator, played by Edward Norton, lives a life of consumption. He fills his apartment with things. He fills his mind with catalogs. He cannot sleep because sleep is too quiet, too close to himself. He creates Tyler Durden noise personified. Chaos, violence, anything to avoid the silence that asks, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when nothing is happening? Ruminators fear their thoughts. Grief avoiders fear their feelings. Identity avoiders fear their emptiness. But all 3 fear the same thing, what they'll find when the noise stops. Here's what happens when you spend your life avoiding silence. You never process anything. Emotions require stillness to move through you. Thoughts require space to organize. Grief requires quiet to release. When you fill every moment with noise, these experiences don't disappear, they accumulate. Psychologist Dr. Guy Winch describes this as emotional debt. Every feeling you avoid becomes interest you owe, and eventually the debt comes due. This is why people who avoid silence often experience sudden breakdowns. Everything seems fine, they're functioning, performing, keeping the noise going, and then something small happens and they shatter. The shattering isn't about the small thing, it's about everything they've been outrunning finally catching up. In Joker, Arthur Fleck fills his life with noise. His laughter, compulsive, painful, constant, his job as a clown, his fantasies of being on a talk show. But there are moments of silence in that film. Moments when Arthur sits alone. And in those moments, you see the weight of everything he's been avoiding pressed down on him. The explosion at the end, the violence, the chaos, is the debt coming due. Years of suppressed pain erupting because it was never given space to be processed. There's also a physical cost. Research from environmental psychologists shows that constant noise exposure elevates cortisol levels chronically. This leads to increased anxiety, disrupted sleep, weakened immune function, and cardiovascular strain. Your body needs silence, not wants it, needs it. A 2006 study published in Heart found that 2 minutes of silence produced more relaxation measured by heart rate and blood pressure than listening to relaxing music. Silence isn't empty. Silence is restorative. It's the space where your nervous system finally exhales. But if you've trained yourself to fear that space, you never let your body heal. You live in a state of constant, low-grade emergency, and eventually, something breaks. Section 7, The Paradox of Noise, 21-30-25-0. Here's the paradox that most people never realize. The noise you use to escape yourself actually keeps you trapped. When you fill silence with distraction, you prevent the very processing that would make silence bearable. You're running from a monster that only exists because you keep running. Think about it. The thoughts you're avoiding, they need to be thought. The feelings you're suppressing, they need to be felt. The grief you're outrunning, it needs to be mourned. And all of these processes require silence. So the more you avoid quiet, the more dangerous quiet becomes. You're feeding the very thing you fear. In Soul, the Pixar film, Joe Gardner spends his whole life pursuing jazz. Music, noise, achievement. He's convinced that his purpose lies in performance, in sound, in the external validation of his talent. But then he ends up in The Great Before, a silent, ethereal space where souls prepare for life. And for the first time, Joe has to stop, has to be still, has to exist without the noise of ambition. At first, it's torture. He doesn't know who he is without his goals, without the sound of applause, without the next gig to chase. But slowly, something shifts. In the silence, he discovers that he was so busy chasing purpose that he missed the point of being alive. The small moments, the quiet joys, the presence that noise had been stealing from him. Joe doesn't find himself in the music. He finds himself in the silence between notes. This is what every silence avoider eventually discovers if they're brave enough to stop running. The quiet isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to heal you. But healing requires sitting still long enough for the wound to be seen. So how do you learn to tolerate silence when your whole nervous system screams against it? It starts with this understanding. You don't have to master silence. You just have to survive it. The goal isn't to suddenly love quiet. It's to prove to your nervous system, slowly, gently, that silence won't kill you. Try this. Start with 60 seconds. Set a timer. Sit somewhere without your phone, without music, without screens. Just 60 seconds of nothing. Your mind will race. Your body will fidget. You'll feel the urge to grab something, check something, fill the space with anything. Don't. Just breathe. Let the 60 seconds pass. That's it. That's the practice. Not meditation, not enlightenment, just survival. And then tomorrow, do it again, and the next day, make it 90 seconds, then 2 minutes. You're not conquering silence, you're befriending it, teaching your nervous system that stillness is safe. Second practice, name what rises. When the silence brings thoughts or feelings, don't fight them, name them. There's anxiety. There's the memory of what I said last week. There's loneliness. Naming creates distance. You stop being the feeling and start observing it. The silence becomes a container rather than a flood. Third, find your anchor. If complete silence feels impossible, use what meditation teachers call an anchor, a single, minimal point of focus. Your breath, a candle flame, the sensation of your feet on the floor. This gives your mind something to hold without giving it somewhere to escape. You're still in the quiet, you're just not alone in it. Finally, investigate the origin. Ask yourself, when did silence become dangerous? Was it childhood? Was there a time when quiet meant something bad was coming? Was there someone whose silence felt like punishment? Was there an absence that stillness reminds you of? Understanding the root doesn't instantly heal it, but it separates the past from the present. The silence in this room, right now, is not the silence of your childhood. You're safe in a way you might not have been then. And that recognition, I'm not there anymore, is the beginning of freedom. I need to tell you what I found when I finally stopped running from silence. For years, I was like Theodore, like Andrew, like every character we've discussed. I slept with podcasts playing. I filled every commute with noise. I couldn't eat dinner without a screen in front of me. And I called it preference. I called it just how I'm wired. But it wasn't preference. It was fear wearing comfortable clothes. The first time I sat in real silence intentionally, without escape routes, I lasted about 45 seconds before grabbing my phone. The second time, I cried. Not sad tears, just release. Years of unfelt things finally finding space to move. The silence didn't attack me, it welcomed me. All those years, I thought I was protecting myself from the quiet, but I was actually protecting myself from the healing that could only happen there. Here's what I want you to understand. The silence holds exactly what you need to face. Not to torture you, to free you. The thoughts that chase you in the quiet, they're chasing you because they need acknowledgement. The feelings that rise, they're rising because they need to be felt and released. The silence isn't your enemy, it's the door. And everything you're running from is actually trying to be healed. I know that's terrifying. I know the noise feels safer. But the noise is a prison disguised as a party, and the key to the door has been waiting for you in the quiet all along. You don't have to run anymore. You can stop, you can breathe, you can listen, and what you'll hear eventually is not the monster you feared. It's the voice of a person who has been waiting, patiently, for you to finally sit down and stay. That person is you, and they have something important to say. So here's what I want you to carry forward. Hating silence is not a personality trait. It's not a quirk. It's not just how you are. It's a signal, a message from your nervous system that somewhere, sometime, quiet became associated with danger. Maybe it was chaos that came after stillness. Maybe it was absence that silence represented. Maybe it was your own thoughts that became too painful to face. But that was then. This is now. The silence in this moment holds nothing that can hurt you. It holds only yourself. And yourself, despite what you've believed, is not the enemy. The noise will always be there if you need it. The distractions will always be available. The world will always offer escape routes. But so will the quiet. Patient, waiting, ready to hold you whenever you're brave enough to enter. You've been running for a long time. You're allowed to rest now. The silence isn't trying to swallow you. It's trying to welcome you home. If this video names something you've been carrying, if you recognize yourself in the noise, the avoidance, the fear of quiet, I need you to do something. Tell me in the comments, what do you fill the silence with? Is it music, podcasts, television, work, endless scrolling? What's your noise of choice? Name it. Not with shame, with honesty, because naming it is the first step toward understanding it. And when you read other people's answers, when you see how many of us are filling the same silence with different sounds, you'll realize you're not alone. You've never been alone. If someone in your life can't sit still, if they always need the TV on, always need music playing, always need distraction, send them this video. Don't explain it, just send it. Let them see themselves in these words. Let them understand that what they've been running from might be trying to heal them. Subscribe if you're ready to stop running. If you're willing to try 60 seconds of silence tonight. If you believe that somewhere in the quiet, there's a version of you waiting to be found. Next week, we're exploring the psychology of people who can't stop helping others. The ones who give until they're empty because receiving feels impossible. Until then, try the quiet. Just once. Not to conquer it, just to survive it. You might be surprised by what you hear. And if what you hear is your own voice finally, after all these years, then you'll know. The silence was never the enemy. The silence was where you've been waiting for yourself all along.